So now, thank you. Now we turn to Deepak.
First of all, I really want to thank Mayor Booker and his extraordinary team. I want to thank the Chambers family and my friends here in New Jersey that made it possible for me to be in this very distinguished group of people. Thank you, Bob, and of course, Lou Katz. I don't see him, but he was here. Giving me this opportunity to listen to these extraordinary minds. So it's very clear that, peace is a thing that happens in a context, and violence also happens in a context. As Jody was talking about the context of social injustice, economic injustice, degraded environments that lead to violence in our minds. At the same time, I think it is very important for us to understand that in the absence of personal transformation, there is no social transformation. That peace can only be created by those who are peaceful. That love can only be shared and acted upon by those who know how to love. So I would go back to Mahatma Gandhi's admonition, can you be the change that you want to see in the world? And if you can't, then this will be another peace conference. I've attended a lot of peace conferences. A lot of really interesting ideas are shared. Even action plans are engendered. But those action plans don't come from a place of peace or joy or love. And I think action without love is meaningless, and also love without action is irrelevant. So you have to have both. I've been very fortunate in the last few years to look at some of the research that His Holiness has inspired in neuroplasticity, and now a whole body of research that is coming out in the field of genetic indeterminism, which is absolutely fascinating, that actually you influence the behavior of 95% of your genes. That's extraordinary, that you can actually change the way, the structure of your brain by doing internal work, that through certain mental practices, you can actually change the way your brain is structured and behaves. We now know that, despite all our real desire for peace, human beings haven't been able to achieve it. Except for a few communities of monks, yogis, rabbis, and few communities that have had peace, when have we had peace in the entire history of humanity? Is the history of war. So, it would be very kind of foolhardy for us to think that there's an immediate solution. And yet, because we are now in the understanding scientifically human behavior, there is a great promise. We have three parts to our brain. The first part is the reptilian brain, which is about 300 million years old, and it knows only how to attack or run. So you make a sudden noise in front of a reptile. If you're very close, it'll attack you. And if you're a little further away, it'll slither away. And that's basically what we have, the fight and flight response. It's 300 million years old. Then we have this limbic brain, which is about 100 million years old, which is our emotional brain, which when our needs are being met, we feel love, compassion, kindness, joy, harmony, laughter. But when our needs are not being met, we become extremely hostile, and we use the limbic brain and the reptilian brain to kill other people and attack other people, and we do it in much more devious ways than other animals. There's violence across evolution. So it's not only human beings that are violent all across, but if you kick a dog, the dog will remember, and if you meet that dog 5 years later, the dog will attack you. But unlike a human being, the dog won't plan for 5 years how to get even. Okay? In our case, it's much more complicated. All the wars right now in the world are about getting even, and we call it justice. We call it justice many times. The getting even is justice, as you said, the just war, so to speak. So where do we go from here? I think it's very important for us to really understand right now that given the data that we have, I'm a senior scientist at Gallup and grateful to get some very interesting data that says, here are some very interesting facts. If you have a happy friend, your happiness will go up by 15%. If your happy friend has a happy friend whom you don't know, it goes up another 10%. And if your happy friend's happy friend has a happy friend whom you don't know, it keeps going up. And when we first looked at this information, we said, how could the happiness of people that I don't know affect my happiness? And if I'm happy, I'm likely to be peaceful, I'm likely to make the right choices, I'm likely not to abuse my body or abuse other people, etc. There's all that data. But the first thing we saw is that the happiness of people whom you don't know influences your happiness. So the happiness of somebody on that street outside in New York, or the happiness of your perceived enemy in Afghanistan or Pakistan actually ultimately influences your happiness. So, when we read in all these great spiritual texts that treat your enemy well, make them happy or be peaceful to them, it actually, now we know that it affects. So when we first saw this data, we said, well, what is happening? There's a deeper reason, which goes to quantum physics. Erwin Schrödinger, in his early writings, in his book, What is Life, says consciousness is a singular that has no plural. Just like electricity is a singular that has no plural. The same electricity is wiring my BlackBerry and these bulbs and the microphone on your television set. So too our consciousness, our spirit, is a singular that has different expressions. And I won't go into this, the fact that consciousness is a field, and that when you affect the field and it reaches a critical mass, and all the great spiritual traditions have talked about this, then there's peace in the environment, there's peace in the community. That's the deeper reason. But there's another reason which is very obvious. If I'm having a conversation with you and you're having a conversation with me, it's not just the two of us that are speaking, it's all the people in my life. If I'm concerned about my child who's very sick, it'll affect our minds and your mind because our minds are entangled. Every time we exchange our emotions, we affect each other. And that's also well proven that there's no such thing, as the Buddha said, there's no such thing as the separate mind. Our minds are entangled. And they're entangled in such a way that they don't stop. The best definition I've heard of mind comes from a UCLA psychotherapist, Daniel Siegel, who has worked extensively with Buddhist monks and mindfulness training. He says the mind is an embodied and relational process that regulates the flow of energy and information. So right now, I'm exchanging my mind with yours and with all the people on this panel, and we are influencing each other. We are influencing neural networks. We are influencing neuropeptides in our brain, and we are influencing each other's biology. Yeah. So not only our minds are entangled, our biology is entangled. Absolutely. And that takes us to a whole new level, the relationship of well-being in general to peace, which also Gallup has done a lot of work on, financial well-being in terms of at least some emotional, financial security, career well-being, having a job, social well-being, being connected to other people, physical well-being, and emotional well-being are all, community well-being are all entangled. So it's pretty complicated. Now with social networks and Facebook and Twitter, the entanglement extends. And of course, because of our cultural history, whether we come from Islam or Judaism or Christianity, our minds are not only horizontally entangled, they are vertically entangled. There's no stopping this thing called mind. It extends through the universe. I just came from a conference in Sweden, 400 physicists who spoke of the fact that even though they disagree on the interpretation of quantum physics, the fact is, and they all agree on the data, and the data says that we are not only connected, we are inseparable. And there's a deeper domain, which we call consciousness, where you're right, we are one. And if we can harness that power within us, and not only through education, as His Holiness said, but through news networks, through social networks, through other types of education, through entertainment, through music, and our collective intent, we can do a lot. I know my time is finished, so just do this one thing for me right now. As you're listening to me, turn your attention to who's listening. Never mind that. There's a part of you that is already at peace. Hang on to that. It's the best thing you can do to the world.
Thank you, Deepak. Wonderful. Thank you so much. That's really marvelous. Thank you very much, Deepak. I want to mention Deepak is giving a workshop, I think, today, later, right? Yeah. And so he'll have a chance to go on.
It's the neuroscience of enlightenment.
Yes, there you go.
Inspired by His Holiness.
Right. Any comment? Yes, Rabbi Michael?
Yeah, I totally agree with you and am inspired by the teachings of spiritual traditions that say we need to be the peace that we believe in, that we need to be the love that we believe in. But there's a danger there, and the danger I saw played out in the movements at the end of the 60s and 70s. And the danger is that once you have that as your criterion, many people then abandon social change movements because, in fact, every social change movement that has ever been and that is ever likely to be is one filled with screwed up human beings. And the reason for that is because there is nothing else but screwed up human beings on the planet. So given that, there needs to be brought into what you've just said, a compassion, a sense of compassion for our own limitations, and to encourage people to be engaged in social transformation while simultaneously working inwardly on their limitations.
I agree.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi.